Nurture and support. Nurture and support. This is a podcast theme song. And it's really short.
Nurture and support begins in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Nurture and Support. This is episode 157, another Westworld episode, episode 3. I am Mel at Karmic9.
Hi everybody, this is Kelly at KELLYTHUL on Twitter.
And more Westworld, more Team Maeve.
Absolutely. Yeah, we get a decent amount of Maeve this episode, which is probably, for me, the best part of the episode.
Yes.
So for Squat Cobbler, we have the Squatties, this imaginary group of people that we think like the podcast. We've never developed our imaginary group for Nurture and Support. I don't know if they're the SUPs. I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
But I've been actively recruiting, trying to get more SUPs. And a gentleman named Carlos that I work with, great guy. And he was actually very excited to hear I podcasted and really wanted to do it. And he listened. I said, don't listen to Squat Cobbler. Listen, because I know Carlos in a professional setting. And so I was like, don't listen to Squat Cobbler. Listen to Nurture and Support. It's a better thing. And he did episode 2 of our Westworld talk. However, Carlos doesn't watch Westworld. So he was like, I really had a hard time following it. And I said, yeah, I mean, even if you watch the show, you probably do. So
Yeah. Well, maybe we can get some more Westworld people. They do need to see season 1, though. Since we're talking about season 2.
Yeah, he's got a lot of homework to do to make some of the recent Nurture and Supports useful to him. But We'll see.
Yes. However, I'm a squatty. I'm a fan of Squat Cobbler. I think you and Mike do an excellent job on Squat Cobbler. It's always exciting to see what path Mike shall drag you down.
It is a mix of anticipation and dread every week to not really know what's going to exactly happen. But there's some fun stuff coming up, and I'm super excited. Do you know the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band at all? Are you familiar with them at all?
The name sounds familiar, but that's about it.
That's our next album review. That'll be coming up here next, and that was my recommendation to Mike. So it's a double album, and so I really put a lot of work in that one. So we'll have to work it out.
Awesome.
So is Mike? I'm a little unclear. Where are we at on the whole Billy Ray Cyrus achy breaky heart?
I'm still offended.
Yep. I've explained that to him, and he tried to rationalize his way out of it a little bit. But I tried to encourage him to take better. I said, if your point was highly repetitive, I suggested maybe he go with Kraftwerk. I think you would find that a less offensive parallel. But he's not taken right now.
Yeah, no. Any comparison to Billy Ray Cyrus and Achy Breaky Heart is offensive. I'm sorry, y'all. But
maybe our next Nurture and Support, I can host a debate between you and Mike around this issue, because I think we need to put it on the table and process our way through it and come to a happy place at the end.
I don't think there is a happy place. I don't have much to say other than a hard no on Billy Ray Cyrus. That's it.
That's fair enough. But I guess we probably need to talk about Westworld.
Yes, that's what we're here for this week. So this is season 2, episode 3. So hopefully we are running several weeks behind the current airing episodes. So hopefully none of you who are listening to this on time are going to be spoiled by anything. But the episode name of this one was Virtu y Fortuna, I believe. I did not translate that, so I don't know what that means.
I'm going to guess something about virtue and fortune.
Yeah.
would be my guess.
Yeah. So I have to say, of the 3 episodes that have aired, this was, while having some highlights, some good moments, some happy moments I've been looking forward to in the season so far, didn't really like this episode. I'm not gonna say I didn't like this episode. It was just, eh. It had a couple really good moments in it, which all involve Team Maeve. So anybody who's been listening so far probably knows what those moments are already, but we'll get to them because they come later in the episode.
So I'm in probably 97% agreement with you in terms of what we've seen so far. This is my least favorite episode. A couple things were moved forward. We get introduced to a new world, so we'll talk about that in a second. A new park, rather. The best moments are Maeve moments, with the exception there is a non-Maeve moment that comes fairly early, which we'll talk about, that I also thought was pretty cool.
Okay. So you want to start off? Are we going to go scene by scene?
Yeah, I mean, high level, scene by scene.
Sure.
You in a good place to do that?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah, so I'll start off. This was tough because there were a lot of scene jumps. There were a couple times where, as I was taking notes, it's like, okay, I got to get a note here because we're here and we're gone pretty quick. But we get introduced to the Raj, which apparently is the Bengal hunting park.
I'm glad to know it has a name because my notes call it Boring India World.
Yeah. So I think that was the first round, and then the marketing people got involved. They said, how about the Raj?
Okay.
And so Bengal hunting, which I can't imagine is high on your list as a hobby as well. And apparently there's other things too, but we'll learn about those, I think, in future episodes. But we're introduced to the Raj and a couple characters in the Raj who we have no frame of reference on. There's a lady and there's a guy, and they kind of start to hook up, and there appears to be efforts to separate them, but they continue to talk, and they eventually end up back at her room, and they're about to get busy and
have some sexy time.
Yes, indeed, and two very good looking individuals, but she's like, you're almost too good looking, so you might be one of these. They're very aware of hosts versus guests, and so she has a very interesting way of determining whether he's a host or a guest, which is to shoot him. And so as this scene played out, when he dropped, where were you at? Were you at he's going to come back and he's
the very first time I saw it, I because he dropped like that and they had that long pause, I thought, oh, he's going to end up being a host, but he got up.
They played some Parcheesi, and then we move on to them going off, let's go kill tigers. And so they're riding elephants. And elephant riding looks fun while you're riding and not so fun on the whole mount dismount to me, based on what I saw.
Yeah.
And it can't be the whole mount dismount, can't be too fun for the elephant either. But they kind of get to a camp and things appear to be a little bit awry. And so what we have started to learn is not only have the hosts gone in rebellion in Westworld, but they're also going in revolt in the Raj. And we get a return of, and it's been a long time since we've heard these violent delights have violent ends.
Yes.
But we get that again.
Yes.
And we get a lot of action, and she's in some trouble. She gets out of some trouble. She runs away. She runs into a tiger. Tiger's not happy.
No, they don't appreciate being hunted either because they're hosts too.
And we had seen this tiger in a previous episode. Yes. And so this starts to connect some dots for us. I was like, oh, so there was like, okay, so now I'm getting a sense of where the tiger came from. And what I did think was particularly interesting on this kind of whole first scene was the park boundary. We actually get to see, when you leave one of these environments, kind of how they've got it set up, which is fairly lame and non-limiting. That it's like, you're leaving the park, you should go back, and there's some laser lights and all that. But it was kind of cool to see them hitting the edge of a park, and then she gets attacked by the tiger, she fires a shot, and they both fall off a cliff into a body of water that we can only assume is going to carry them to where we see the tiger later.
Right. Yeah, the only interesting thing to me about any of that world was the boundary of the park, of them showing us that, but also the woman herself, who I called her mystery woman in my notes. I think maybe her name ends up being Laura. I'm not positive.
I think it's Laura, and I'm going to need some name help for you in a second, but yeah. I think it is Laura.
Yeah. She appears to be there for shady purposes and not entirely hunting tigers from her notes that she keeps looking at and hiding from everyone. So she's there for some, to me, it looks as if they're trying to tell us she's there for some other reason.
And she
So,
has some sort of map
yeah.
that I can't entirely figure out. But yeah, she does appear to have a bigger issue, and she kind of hints at that in a couple of the conversations.
Right.
You want to take the next scene?
Let's see. So I think after that we go into a later time frame of Bernard and his, I don't know what we want to call them, the rescuers that found him on the beach previously. They are entering a facility that one of the tough guy mercenary chick tells them has been gutted. And they wander around in there and come across Hale. So
yeah, and they mentioned the cradle has been destroyed.
Yes.
Which we've gotten some hints of that being kind of an important thing. We don't know exactly what it's all about, but it's not good that it's been destroyed, I assume.
Right. And I was, we'll come across this later, but I was wondering if that was the same facility that Team Maeve is in later. Did you get the sense that it was the same facility?
Yes, I do. I mean, it gets murky because they do a lot of time shifts and so trying to kind of, particularly with Bernard, trying to figure out, okay, where are we at with you? But I think it could be the same facility, but they do actually get down in there, and Bernard is having issues. He's not operating at 100%.
Yeah, and they go. I mean, that was one of those really short scenes that they had, and then they go back to a previous timeline right after that to Hale and Bernard and their original search for Peter. So we come across the incomparable Rebus in that scene. So
Rebus, that's who. So that's Simon from The Walking Dead.
Yes, that is his name in Westworld. His character's name is Rebus. And they have captured some of the guests from the party and are talking about selling them off. Rebus is generally a bad guy, but Hale and Bernard are tracking Peter still from the previous timeline of when Hale is trying to catch Peter in order to get rescue. Peter, meanwhile, is having a breakdown in the line, and Rebus is being a typical criminal. But Bernard, Hale does a help damsel in distress, drawing the criminal to her to add to the line, and they capture Rebus and do a quick USB port brain wipe on him and turn him into a very virtuous gunfighter, and then he goes out and kicks some Confederado butt and attempts to save people. Whereas my notes for this one have the angriest rendition of Glory, Glory, Hallelujah you will ever hear. Courtesy of Peter.
Yeah, it was not the Up With People version of My Nights of Seeing the Glory. Yeah, that was good. And one of the best lines Rebus has is, so apparently guests go for $15 a head in terms of the current market to sell people in Abernathy as well in this process, which they have like 9, although he wants to keep one in reserve for other activities. But he a very interesting phrase in this process, and so there's a couple I did a little bit of research on this.
Okay.
There's a couple variants of this phrase. I will use the family-friendly version of this phrase, which is sitting in high cotton, which is not what Rebus says. He almost says that.
Yes.
But instead of sitting, he says a different word. But I thought it was a tremendous line, and I'm like, so did they just make this up for the show? And I did a little more digging, and I find out it is actually a colloquialism. It has to do with the fact of opulence and in a good position and doing well. So Rebus feels when I sell all these people, I'm going to be sitting or something else in high cotton. And And that has to do with wealth. That as you go back to the South at the time, that if you had cotton that was very high, you were in a really good financial position. So
Right.
he's a super happy guy. He does, and I don't know if it's USB 2 or USB-C, or we're unclear on the actual port device, but he does get turned into, which I thought was amazing, this highly virtuous, homicidal guy. Cleans everybody else out, and the poor lady, the poor guest that he had his eyes on as a future playmate, he comes back, he's like, no, let me escort you. I'm here to help you. And she's having none of it.
Yes, I forget the phrase. I didn't write it down. What he yells at her is something about, it's something along the lines of you'd expect, these woods are very dangerous. Let me help you. So that wasn't the exact quote. I didn't write it down, but that was the gist of it. And she's like, no.
she's got like no clue on that.
It was a very humorous scene to see Rebus change characters like that. But that was great. That was one of the better parts.
And so that was my non-Maeve cool point of because I'm a big fan of Rebus, Simon, Stephen Ogg. He's fantastic, and so really really cool on that. And so it's great to see him. And based on how it played out, we may see a little more of him because he appears to be on escort duty now, or trying to be.
Right, and he didn't actually get killed in this episode.
Yeah,
so that's different than every other episode I think we have seen him in, is he has always ended up getting shot. So he is currently surviving in Westworld at the moment. Yes, and his last personality wipe has made him a very virtuous gunfighter. Right. So I'm looking forward to his reappearance.
So like Mel, I am Team Maeve primarily, but I'll be Team Rebus secondarily because he's pretty cool as well.
Yes.
Then there's, go ahead.
It'd be pretty cool if Rebus joins up with Team Maeve, but I think that's maybe not going to happen right now.
That would be actually very cool if it would, though. Super short scene next where we get Dolores and what I will refer to as zombie Clementine at this point in time, because she's kind of dead-eyed, big on the dragon, likes to drag people around. That seems to be her main purpose in life right now. But they have come to the sadly named Fort Forlorn Hope, and Dolores is kind of making the pitch to say, hey, we need to partner up. There's bad stuff coming, and you need me, I need you. And there's a little bit of that conversation.
Right. Yeah. I also called her Zombie Clementine. and I have a note that Teddy still isn't so sure about this chain of events. Poor Teddy. I really feel sorry for Teddy.
Yeah, he's highly perplexed on many points throughout this episode.
Yeah, Teddy. I think Teddy's got a rough road ahead, but yeah, after that little scene, we get back to Team Maeve. Yay! I always love Team Maeve. They are traversing through the landscape and trying to pull a donkey across a river, and they come across Ghost Nation. But don't worry, Hector speaks Lakota and tries to calm the situation down. But it doesn't work.
Not entirely. So I'm going to need a little more. So thanks for the Rebus help. So in my notes, all I have is Weasel Boy for the
Lee.
other guy.
I had to look his name up. I always forget his name for some reason. His name is Lee. But Weasel Boy works. Everybody knows who you're talking about.
Yep. So Ghost Nation, Maeve, Hector, and Weasel Boy, Lee, run into Ghost Nation, and they're like, you can, if you're on this path, we're not going to mess with you. Go right ahead, but we want him. And oddly enough, Maeve and Hector say no, and so they kind of take off, and they take off, and they do escape underground in one of the little elevator setups that they've got going on.
Yes. Yep. And they end up in some facility. So.
Yep.
Fun.
Which is some super fun stuff kind of comes. Man, this is so thanks for Rebus. Thanks for Lee. You got one more coming.
Okay.
So just know coming up here. But so then we jump again to now Dolores and Abernathy. Dolores and her father are reunited. Bernard's with this group because they've kind of hauled all these people in. And so Dolores says, you need to, and Teddy, and this was a case where Teddy was kind of assertive and kind of backed Dolores up. And they do get Abernathy out to a safe place for Dolores to talk to him more. And she looks at Bernard and says, send him to jail with the others. But it's pretty darn clear that Abernathy is not doing so well.
Yeah, he's no bueno.
Nope.
His brain, his CPU is not working properly. So is this the scene where she gives Teddy all the backstory? Teddy doesn't recognize Mr. Abernathy.
Nope, that's coming up. That's
Okay.
coming up in the next scene. So at this point, they just kind of separate. Abernathy goes to get taken care of. Bernard goes to jail.
Yeah.
And then we return to, and you can go and take this scene where we're
Okay.
back to Team Maeve.
We go back to Team Maeve, walking through the maze-like halls of this facility, and they're kind of angry at Lee/Weasel Boy because he's an executive in this corporation and he doesn't know where he's at. So he gets a little offended that Hector and Maeve seem close and they hold hands. And Lee just really gets out of joint about this because that's not their story. They're supposed to be loners. Each of them are supposed to be loners. They're not supposed to hook up. They're not supposed to care about each other. They're loners. And they proceed to try to tell Lee he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And in the midst of all of this, Hector's backstory, which I may have missed if they explained it in the first season, Hector's backstory is that he loves a girl named Isabella who is apparently dead, and because of that he will never love again. And I guess that's also why he's a black-clad criminal warlord. But anyway, he starts spouting about how much he loves Maeve, and of course it's lines from his narrative about Isabella, and Lee starts repeating them with him. And poor Hector is a little perturbed, and he would really like to beat the crap out of Weasel Boy. But Maeve intercedes because for some reason she needs Weasel Boy. So that was an enlightening little talk in which Maeve, in her very astute way, discovers that the Isabella storyline for Hector is one that Lee wrote and is a reflection of his life, and Hector is supposed to be the badass version of Lee, which is just really, really funny.
So it's clearly Lee leveled up to be Hector.
Lee leveled up a lot.
Yeah, I loved this. This was a really, really cool scene because it was this combination of them somewhat breaking free from the constraints, but also some of the constraints still there. When he starts to quote, when some of the lines come out and he starts to repeat them. So it's this whole process of, you don't know me, and he starts repeating his lines. So maybe I do know you so much. So it was kind of cool between the kind of whole Hector Lee interaction, the Lee Maeve interaction, and there appears to be obviously a very strong, genuine bond between the hosts of Maeve and Lee, and of Maeve and Hector. And so this is a really, really kind of cool scene. Like, kind of covers a lot of levels of what's going on here, and that he clearly has influence over what they are, but parts of which he no longer does. So I really did like this little scene.
Yeah, it's one of the better scenes of this episode that gives us a lot of background information that just builds the world more and builds the characters more. And of course, who doesn't love Hector and Maeve? I love Hector. Hector's awesome, but Maeve is awesomer still.
Yeah, and I've grown too. While I really, really, really disliked Lee in the kind of early portions.
Yes.
He's flawed. Yes, I give that. But there's something about him that's kind of okay, and I'm rooting for him a little bit.
He's an endearing little weasel in his own way. He's so pathetic, you just can't help but hope he doesn't make learn something in the process.
Yeah.
Because he is. Your moniker for him that he's a little weasel is very apt.
So then we
Uh,
jump back to Dolores. She's now pulled Bernard out of jail to see what he can do to fix Abernathy. I think this is actually the scene where Teddy gets a little bit of backstory too about Abernathy, which is odd that Teddy doesn't know that Abernathy's her father. But some of that's in there. But then this is why, you and I become very strong Team Maeve. Dolores appears, or Wyatt, appears to have some other motivations, which is they intend to dominate this world. So that starts to advance, and there is beauty in what we are, that's cool. That's good from there. But there's this kind of conflicted confidence in who they are, but also this idea of I'm going to own and control this kind of stuff. So, and we still don't know if it's USB 2 or USB C, but more to come on that.
Yeah, that scene was actually one of the only ones where I got a quote out of this particular episode, and it was where Dolores is explaining to Bernard how she wants to dominate this world, and he gives his opinion on the matter, that he says this world is just a speck of dust sitting on a much bigger world. There is no dominating it. Well, Dolores / Wyatt disagrees and says something interesting to Bernard, that he's never seen the real world because he's Bernard, not Arnold. And from what we've seen so far, Bernard has never been outside the park. So,
and Dolores has, and she brings that to his attention.
Right. I think of the scene after that, we're back to Team Maeve in the bunker place.
Yep.
And my next, this is not a deep, meaningful quote, but it is again Lee. So they're still walking through the bunker. Lee is whining that he's tired and he wants to rest, and his quote was, "The feeble among us need to rest." And I do like Lee for at least admitting that he's the weak one in this scenario, because the hosts keep on ticking, but Lee's tired and feeble. So
yeah, and we got a guy on fire.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll get a little more context on later. But we do actually in this scene see the return of a character that we've been very excited to see return.
Yes. So first off, we got a guy on fire. Who set him on fire? How'd this poor guy end up on fire? Our Mistus got a dragon, as Hector is so happy to say. She got flamethrower, and she is setting all the QA people she can find on fire. So she saves them, leads them back to her little nest, which is another elevator that will take them to the surface. But guess who's chained to the wall, my friends? Felix. Yay!
Super happy.
I've been so worried about Felix. I'm so glad that Mama Maeve is back to take care of little baby Felix. I hope that she takes care of him.
Yeah, I think he remains possibly the most likable character in this entire universe. From there, this whole combination of self-awareness and kind of seeing what's going on, and a genuine quality to his character. So it's good to see Felix is back. It's good to see he's not dead. His jerkwad buddy is also there with a grenade under his chin, and Armistice takes care of that. Armistice was the other name that I kept watching and going like, I know that name, I know what it was, but they never referred to her by name, I don't believe, in the episode.
No, they never said her name in this episode, and I always want to call, this is my quirk, I always want to call her War Child for some reason. Her name is Armistice, but my notes always end up calling her War Child. I'm like, I know that's not her name, but I always have to look it up. So anyway, she's awesome, and she's down to, remember she lost her arm in last season. She's got a new arm, y'all.
Kind of an Anakin Skywalker kind of mojo going on.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that happened, but I'm glad. That
I'm sure hopefully we'll find that out in a scene of how she comes across Felix and his other friend. And I'm sure they probably fixed her, but at probably with a flamethrower to their head or some such, because that's how our missus rolls.
Yep.
But I hope we will get that scene at some point this season about how that came about.
Yep. Super fun character. Love her. So she's very, very cool. I'll kind of plow through it. There's like a couple of quick cuts here, and I'll kind of knock them off for us on that. We do kind of cut back to Dolores, Bernard, and Abernathy, and apparently Abernathy has some sort of immense encrypted file in him that Charlotte Hale and other folks really, really want. But so we kind of discover it, and Bernard's kind of piecing it together and trying to break in, and it's hard, and it's big, and it's massive, and it apparently is very, very important. So we get a little bit of context on that. We jump then very quickly back to Charlotte Hale, who is heading to Sector 21 for a showdown. Sector 21 will be Fort Forlorn Hope, and we're going to see what kind of goes on next for this kind of big scene, which I will hand over to my good friend Mel to discuss.
Yeah, so Bernard starts to decrypt that file in Peter's brain and acts very horrified at it. But yeah, so the fort's getting attacked, y'all. We're going to find out why Dolores needed all those Confederados on her side. And it's not for a good reason. So the QA folks and Miss Hale start attacking the fort en masse and start plowing through the Confederados. And Dolores, are we shocked? Are we shocked that Dolores betrays them? No, because that's how Dolores rolls.
So not meaning to nitpick, but are these Confederados or these are Federales?
I believe they are Confederados is who they're supposed to be, I believe.
Whoever they are, Dolores hoses them. Totally hoses them, because she says, put them out there. And so they're out there running against the new forces kind of coming in. And eventually the doors close. And so they are trapped between the oncoming onslaught, and they can't get into Fort Forlorn Hope. Not a very cool thing.
No, and in the midst of that, Hale's little personal squad, gets inside the fort, grabs Peter. They miss Bernard hiding in the corner, and they drag Peter away, in which Dolores sees this happening, abandons her post, and she and Teddy go out guns blazing, but they are ultimately unsuccessful, and Hale gets away with Abernathy, and Dolores is not happy.
Not at all. And so in this whole process where the folks get shut out of the fort, Dolores, and this is why I'm very strongly Team Maeve and not so much Team Dolores, is she's like, some of us don't deserve to make it. And so she's kind of calling the ball on some things there.
Mm-hmm.
And so this all kind of breaks out. And so again, another name check for you. So who's the kind of quasi secondary leader that feels betrayed?
Major Craddock.
Not the old guy with the handlebar, the younger guy.
He's a colonel. So the guy that we've seen before, the younger guy. Yeah, the younger guy is Major Craddock, I believe.
Oh, he is Craddock? Okay.
Yes. The other guy is a colonel.
Okay, so he pieces it together and realizes they're completely hosed, and Dolores tells Teddy, go put these guys down. Go put these dogs down. And so eventually those that weren't locked out of the fort are pulled back to a back wall where Dolores has given Teddy instructions to say clean them out. And Teddy, being Teddy, is not prepared to do that, and he kind of sends them on their way. And Dolores is able to observe this and is quite disappointed in Teddy.
Yeah, there's a very disappointed look on her face, though. The Major did have a good line in that he tells Teddy, and this may be what turned Teddy's mind around. He told Teddy, you and I are both triggermen to tyrants. And that tells you how the other hosts are looking at Dolores. If you're not a member of what Dolores so lovingly calls her horde. So I thought that was an interesting word to use in Westworld, to call her forces a horde. But she instructs Teddy at one point to split the horde. She and Teddy are going to go to Sweetwater, but the
She
horde
needs
needs to be.
something. We don't know what that is, but she's something from there.
She needs something from
But
Sweetwater.
he makes a point to Teddy around, I know what I'm serving a tyrant, but I know what I'm going for.
Right.
You're serving a tyrant, and you're not so sure in
Yes.
that process, which is legit in terms of the process.
And Teddy is very conflicted. I feel for Teddy. I don't think Teddy's going to end up in a good place.
No, I would agree. I mean, the actor portraying Tracy's doing such a great job of what's going on there.
The innocent confusion on his face is just, it's a great acting job. He's doing a really good job with that character because Teddy's so lost.
Yep.
So
we leave Fort Forlorn Hope and we jump back to the tiger and the Raj lady. They kind of washed up on the shore and they are found by Ghost Nation.
Which I can't imagine is going to end up well, but that's where they leave it.
Yep.
So after that, we get a last scene of the show, of this episode, is Team Maeve in the mountains. They are cold. Felix's whiny friend is whining about being cold.
And there's snow.
There's snow and trees, and Lee thinks they're close to the Klondike narrative. And so they're only, I think he says 3 sectors from the homesteads that they're trying to go to. And unfortunately, Maeve gets attacked by a Japanese warrior who I think really doesn't fit into the Klondikes. But hey, things are falling apart in the park.
Yeah, and we had a chance to see Lee kind of dig around, and so they're in this area, there's snow, and he kind of finds a section, he kind of digs it out, and he pulls out a Japanese warrior helmet with a head still in it, I believe, is the process. And he's like, we really, really, really need to get out of here. And he's trying to convince Maeve of that, and she's kind of like, I got this under control, I'm good, and all that. And then we do see this warrior with the sword kind of charging at her, and that's kind of where it ends.
Right.
So my major kind of quibble with this episode is, okay, so you are Delos, I guess, needing to kind of resolve issues, and we're like, we need to go take out Fort Forlorn Hope. And they bring lots of guys and lots of gals with good guns to kind of take care of that. It strikes me that a helicopter or two would have very rapidly resolved this issue.
Yeah, you would think that given that they have the dune buggies that definitely don't fit into the world of Westworld, that, they would have aerial transportation that would be useful. What if they had to medevac somebody? You would think that they have access to, things like helicopters, but who knows? Maybe we'll find out later about, maybe that's what was in the cradle.
Who knows?
Maybe the cradle had all of the flying things.
Yeah, that's super helpful, in this particular scene, because that would have made this whole. It was a fun, interesting action scene, lots of stuff going on. But it was like, so you got a lot of horsepower with the dune buggies and stuff. A little bit of aerial help would have kind of cleaned this up super quick.
Well, yeah, and it also, it is the one we're dealing with Westworld, but it's the one particularly unbelievable aspect of this world building that they've done is that the park is closed. There is no point maintaining any sort of continuity for the guests because the guests are being killed. Yep. So a helicopter would have done a really good job here. And since they all have guns, one would think that they might have a helicopter with guns even, but surely they would have a helicopter of some sort for medical emergencies anyway, one would think. That could be used in the situation that would be much more effective than throwing bodies at a fort full of people with 6-shooters. So
people walking in an open field towards a fort with people with guns. You could have seen that. And so while I had, so this is entertainment. We need to suspend some disbelief. We need to kind of roll with it. So there are pieces, okay, for entertainment value, I'll do that. It creaked on me a little bit this time,
Yeah.
but there are elements, and we'll talk about it when we talk about episode 4, where I have the most profound issue with the underlying concepts of this story. But we'll talk about that on episode 4.
All right. So there's something to look forward to, y'all.
So still fun. First 2 were stronger. This is still, the couple. We had some development. We had a little bit of Maeve, which is awesome. We're gonna get a lot more Maeve, I believe, coming up, which will be great. We learned about high cotton, so we're all better for that.
I think most of us in the South probably caught that. You people up north, you just don't know what
I had awareness of, I expected what that meant. Okay. I was accurate to the you were sitting pretty. I got that, but I was able to kind of research a little bit more. Okay, so this is the background. It's not
a phrase that's actually used, but I think most of us down here have probably come across it before.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and so a lot of Team Maeve, a lot of awesome Hector. Felix is back. Our Mistus is back. So those are all the high points of this episode. Dolores is still a jerk. For a lot of reasons. Dolores has been through a lot, but Dolores, I think Tyrant's a good name for her. We'll have to see as the season goes on if Dolores is able to, I don't know, raise herself in my opinion, or I don't know. We'll have to see what her ultimate goal is. I'm not sure her ultimate goal is an entirely world domination, and who knows. We're still going to find out what's out there that she's looking for, but we'll have to see just how much she hurts Teddy. I'm afraid she's going to hurt Teddy at some point quite a lot. So I feel sorry for Teddy.
So we shall see in future episodes what happens there.
Yep. So we'll be back for episode 4. So stay tuned, everyone.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
You can contact us on our website, nurtureandsupport.net, or email us at nurtandsupp@gmail.com. That's NURTANDSUPP@gmail.com. Or tweet us at nurtandsupp on Twitter.
Nurturing and supporting.